Harry Litman, you were the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General back in the day. You were also a United States Attorney, top federal prosecutor for the Western District of Pennsylvania. You're a fourth floor DOJ guy, meaning it's the top of the top leadership there in the Department of Justice. So with all of this news taking place, one, Donald Trump's purge of all of the DOJ officials who had some relation to his case and also January 6 cases, Trump launching investigations, criminal investigations into Department of Justice prosecutors who were involved in these things. I have to get your reaction because you're near and dear to the Department of Justice. You led teams at the Department of Justice. You may know some of these people. You have better insight into this than just about anyone. What's going on? What does it mean? What happens next? What do we do?
It's the worst crisis in DOJ history. The only comparison points you could even come up with are Watergate and the Saturday Night Massacre, and Trump himself and the showdown where he wanted to basically force the department to lie in support of his effort to steal the election and to lie to the state of Georgia. Both times, and they are storied times in the annals of the DOJ. Both times, Republican political appointees stood up and said, you cannot do that. I'm going to resign. They did in Watergate. They threatened to en masse in the Trump situation. That's the only thing that made him stay his hand. And of course, he learned how to get around that. So now way more serious and way more, putting way more in doubt how this works out. He's got not respectable professional Republican or Democrat people who care about the DOJ, but flunkies and lackeys there who are based completely on the on what's in Trump's interest and the lie. There's always a lie at the core that somehow the people who did their jobs and did them in support of completely legitimate righteous prosecutions have done something wrong. A point I really want to make is the rule of law and doing it without fear or favor is not like it's a categorical point, right? If this can stand and people for doing their jobs can be dismissed as they're trying to do with the Smith team, we don't have a Department of Justice in anything like the way you can't say, well, 98% of it is there. If the core can be actually abused this way, it's catastrophic, and everybody in the DOJ knows it. Now, these people are dismissed. If they want to fight it, they have a lot of ammunition to do it. They have a lot of rights that they didn't even try to comply with. And but Trump doesn't care because he'll just tell the DOJ to defend it, and they lose. I want to focus for a moment, though, on the other shoe that dropped yesterday. So the acting U.S. attorney for Washington, so now he has credentials. 2 weeks ago, his main role in life, the reason we know him is he was an election denier and who stayed indefatigable in support of the January 6th protesters after they were in jail. He worked for their clemency. He supported them in different ways. Even in a legitimate Department of Justice, he's someone who shouldn't be within 6 miles of them and trying to work in the Department of Justice about them. His interest is so strong, so personal. He has sent a letter and he is going to undertake an investigation. Is it civil? Is it criminal? We don't know. U.S. attorneys' offices don't normally undertake investigations. They bring cases. But he wants to say that the department prosecutors on Smith's team, in the wake of the Supreme Court's opinion in the Fisher case, having to do with obstruction, you might recall, and the department did what it always has to do responsibly. It went back, assessed what it could salvage and what it give way to, in full respect, as it accorded it, as it always does, to the U.S. Supreme Court. They made certain decisions. He's now, in a sinister way and in a totally biased way, suggesting that those people not only should be discharged, which is a complete outrage, but should face an investigation. And to make it even worse, he has forced the senior personnel in that office, the respected folks, to undertake that investigation, to sort of Nazi tactics of making leaders of the community do the dirty work as against the people in the communities. This is an absolute stake to the heart of the DOJ of people for doing their jobs, always doing their jobs, doing nothing but their jobs, can now not just be discharged, but literally the subjects of investigation. We, again, don't have a Department of Justice. We are perilously close to Hungary. It's exactly what strongman authoritarian regimes do. They take reprisals on behalf of the strongman and make people pay, and here rub their noses in it for having had the nerve to do their jobs. And if this can stand, you know, we're now at the beginning of an administration with lackeys overseeing this, and in a province where it's very hard for courts to order, you know, that this is the business of the DOJ. In fact, we know the immunity opinion says even if this is breaking the law, the president would be immune. If this could stand, and I'm talking about now, down the line, if it's not understood deeply and in the bones of the country that this is dead wrong and this is an assault on the Constitution every bit as serious as, say, the civil rights era or the embrace of slavery, then we just don't have the same democracy that we had 2 weeks ago. The stakes couldn't be higher, and everyone who knows the DOJ, including people who know people personally there, is livid, outraged, disgusted, and the jerk has managed to do this terrified. It's a very, very dark day.
It is even worse than the worst fears of those former DOJ officials, is how many kind of described it to me. Now, Harry, you have a federal judiciary in Washington, D.C., which would have a lot of jurisdiction over kind of D.C. wrongful termination, D.C. things. I mean, these federal judges, a lot of them got their start, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, working in the Department of Justice. That's usually part of the career, not always, but part of the career path in becoming a federal judge. Is often having some role in the Department of Justice, some role maybe clerking for a federal judge before that, some private practice, then a federal judgeship is usually, you know, the path. So, you know, you mentioned Justice John Roberts and his absolute immunity ruling. It was absolutely insane because he put a line in there that didn't even need to be in there. Like, of course you would be immune if you were the president and you reached out to your Department of Justice and you told them that here's what you need to do. That's a clear core constitutional function. No one ever envisioned that way. Actually, no, there was always judicial independence. So it was a weird one in giving, weird's probably understating it significantly, a weird example to say that's subject to immunity. That was never supposed to happen. But Harry, so what are these federal, it's basically up to the federal judges at this point in DC, the circuit court judges, and if it gets back to the Supreme Court, you know, it's not criminal for Trump to do this. It's not under Nixon v. Fitzgerald. Trump can unlawfully terminate people. He's immune from that as well. But in terms of anything, I mean, what's the plan of attack? How do you,
That's right.
How do you deal with this?
The best case scenario now is that the law will prevail for these individuals. They'll go to great expense. They'll be in a department where they are alienated, and they will, nevertheless, they'll first have to go through administrative remedies. They'll immediately need lawyers. Now, there are armies, really. I'm aware of them, of people stepping up to represent them. So outraged, and very good lawyers are they by what's happened. But the best case scenario for these guys is there's a remedy. They, courts can order reinstatement, but think about it. As has already happened with some leaders in the department, the department can say, "Fine, welcome back. By the way, you're now assigned to asset forfeiture in Wyoming. Hope you like it." So they can make their lives miserable anyway. It's almost certain that they'll, their future prospects in the DOJ, and the future right now is the next 4 years, are nil. That's the best case scenario for the people who were fired so clearly unlawfully. The other folks, it's in some ways worse, because the ability of the judiciary, which I think is really they know what's going on. As you say, many of them were in the department. I'm sure in the lunchroom, they are like, what the hell is this madman doing? And they've already been totally disrespected, and as has the country, as has the Constitution, in the treatment of the pardoned offenders. But an investigation, whatever the hell that is, they start making trouble, want to do reports, maybe, even want to do criminal investigations until it reaches a certain point, which it may never reach. There's really no way for the judiciary to reach in and remedy things or stop things, because that is the executive's province, which typically is for good reason. But there's for good reason that here's the executive, here's the Congress, here's the court, and here the executive wants to swallow everything up. So I'm very sorry to say, really, ashen and irate, that the best case scenario for these guys is a bad case scenario. They're being screwed big time. Trump knows it. And even if they win under the law, it'll be at great cost. And there are some who will be slapped around and completely humiliated and made, to experience financial ruin in internal circumstances that nobody in the government can even get to, because that's the notion of an internal executive power, which makes sense, of course, if people are generally complying with the law, constitutional norms. And here we have someone who is flouting them. It's like a madman's been released on the fourth floor, going around with, grenades and strafing people and stuff, and nobody is in a good position to stop it. And we are in week 2. This is really grave.
Harry Litman, Talking Feds YouTube, Talking Feds podcast, Talking Feds Substack, everybody. It's where I get my legal news from. We need people right now who are true subject matter experts in areas who can help us navigate these moves. It's why it's so important for me to get my legal news from Harry Litman. It's why I think you should as well. Harry Litman's, it's the Talking Fed YouTube. Just search Talking Feds, Talking Feds on Substack, Talking Feds podcast. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.